City of Stevens Point Redevelopment Authority meeting, recorded May 15, 2025.
Alrighty, we'll call the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Stevens Point to order. Director will take the roll.
Chairperson Slice.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Gardner.
Here.
Alderperson Kneebone.
Here.
Commissioner Cooper.
Here.
Commissioner Kemmeter.
Here.
Commissioner Laddick.
Here.
Commissioner Barrett is excused.
Alrighty, we have a quorum. Number 2, persons who wish to address the board on a specific agenda item other than a public hearing must register their request at this time. Those who wish to address the board during the public hearing are not required to identify themselves until the public hearing is declared open by the chairperson. We do not have any public hearings on our agenda. Number 3, public comment for pre-registered individuals for matters appearing on the agenda. Nothing there.
We had the 2 comments submitted via email today from Joy Brenner and Chloe Cruiser, our downtown business improvement district director, and Joy is the manager for, the operating director for merged urban development from the Northside Yard project. Those letters are included at the end of your packets.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Number 1, approval of minutes of April 3rd, 2025 meeting of the Redevelopment Authority.
I move we accept the minutes of April 3rd, 2025, and place them on file.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Comments? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of Downtown Redevelopment Fund and associated training. Director.
I'm actually going to pass this one to Chris. I know we have talked about this one a few times. We just want to keep having that discussion, gathering information that you guys request. Chris, I will pass it to you.
Sure thing, Director. Thank you, and thanks, everyone. I want to explicitly thank Commissioner Cooper for some of the advice in redesigning or drafting up the application that you have in your packets today for the Downtown Development Fund. We did take feedback and restructure some of the program for a revolving loan fund to support more urban infill in our downtown district, and using the downtown district as a pilot program. We are very sensitive to the fact that we do not want support just to be restricted to one area for commercial development. We anticipate this fund being something that revolves from location to location over time, and so I want to emphasize that this fund is targeting the downtown district because of our recent downtown targeted area master plan, and the downtown having a need for additional funds and support, and to address some of the gaps that we've discussed over the last few meetings that are inherent in our Central Wisconsin Economic Development Fund, as well as a gap in TIF financing. I want to correct something I had mentioned at our last meeting, the question about whether or not TIF assistance could be applied to all of the projects that the Downtown Development Fund could support. And I do want to correct myself. I misspoke at our last meeting in that I said yes, TIF assistance could be applied to all of the projects that we're discussing, but that is incorrect. I'm reminded by our director that for projects to acquire TIF assistance, it does need to meet the but-for argument. And if we're discussing smaller commercial build-outs or smaller commercial expansions, the amount of TIF assistance would be very minimal, if possible at all. Several of those redevelopments might not meet the but-for argument. Some may, right? If there's a second floor expansion or a basement expansion in a building that's currently being occupied, sure, that'll add square footage and some incremental value into the property. And so we can evaluate for TIF assistance in a project like that. But the amount of capital it takes to move in for a business to start developing that space, especially as a retail business, is pretty constrained. So I just wanted to correct my misspeaking in our last meeting there. I did take advice from our local lenders regarding our length of loan terms, reducing the length of loan terms on real estate development projects, working capital, and equipment purchases. So you'll notice that in the draft program. And then separating working capital as a separate category from equipment. Discussion about working capital for restaurants versus retail industry, that oftentimes working capital is going to be turning over fast and shouldn't really be looking for working capital loan in a restaurant business because there is such a quick turnover. But in a retail space, you'll likely need some amount of lending in order to support those types of businesses. I also expanded upon, we discussed this as a pilot program for other districts and commercial development throughout the city. But if we did have a local business that needed assistance now, we did expand the maximum of the fund balance to go from 10% to 20%, so that if we did have a local business that was seeking an expansion project, that we could support them with this initial seed. I included a lot of this discussion also within the memo that's in your packets, but I would open this up to discussion. And frankly, we do have soft commitments or interest from 3 separate business or property owners in accessing a revolving loan fund such as this, including Fall Line Outfitters, an owner of a property further down Main Street, as well as the management company for Merge Urban Development, to help expand a retail incubator program where they would take 3 commercial units and combine them and turn that into an incubation program to support 5 retailers at a smaller amount of square foot, where they could share that unit, receive technical assistance, as well as the shared resource of shared staffing. Since they have 5 retailers overseeing 1 location, they can combine their staffing power, and then also receive assistance in building out their digital commerce platforms, so they're not relying on just the physical location. So we do have a strong interest in 3 parties to access this fund immediately. Expect one of the businesses to start their expansion project in Q1 of 2026. Another would follow shortly after in summer of 2026. And then with the Northside Yard Retail Incubator Project, they're out soliciting architectural renderings and costs right now for their build out. And I would very much like to have this tool on the back end ready for them if we were to move forward with this technical assistance program. The Small Business Development Center has already drafted their 7-week curriculum, and we've provided some input to add in another week to have one-on-one training with a digital commerce builder, so they have that training baked in that they can get into both their physical retail space and a digital retail space. With that, I would open up for questions and discussion, and staff would recommend approval of the program as presented, with a seed fund of $250,000 to be allocated to businesses and to cover training and mentorship costs. We would expect some overlap in training and mentorship from the administrators of the Central Wisconsin Economic Development Fund, knowing our, I suppose, target market with this program and addressing the gaps of Central Wisconsin Economic Development Fund.
Is there a maximum of amount of a loan?
We set the maximum at 50% of the loan fund or 50% of the project costs, whichever one is higher.
Okay, is there anybody else that have contributed to this fund yet?
Not yet. My directive from the local lenders is don't come asking for funds until we have the program established and the public commitment.
Commissioners, I'll open it up.
Just a point of information, how many businesses in the downtown area have second floors that are undeveloped, so left?
That's a great question. We're actually going to be evaluating that this summer with an intern from UW-La Crosse who's assisting our business improvement district in evaluating the vacancies on second floors. We can point to at least half a dozen right now, but some of them we are aware of but don't have an accurate measurement of how vacant they are. There's another business that is seeking to acquire acquire their first location. They're currently operating and they're leasing a space. The building that they're looking to move into right now, the entire second floor should be vacant based on only having one means of egress. But if they were able to borrow for the installation of another stairwell with the limited income they do have, they would be able to convert that second floor unit into a means of income too. So hopefully we can report an exact number of second floor vacancies, but we know there are at least half a dozen immediately that could use support.
Other comments, questions? Dave?
Chris, looks really good, and I know you put a lot of time into this. That's awesome. One thing that I thought of earlier this week, and I apologize I didn't reach out to you, I wondered, and I'm just spitballing ideas here, if you wanted a section in here for ineligible projects or properties. The reason I think of that mostly is to kind of maybe try and reduce the burden of phone calls and emails the office gets. Because I can see someone looking at this saying, wow, 2.5%, I'm paying 7 on my property down there. I want to refinance. Well, that's not what this is for. Right? I mean, that's not what we're doing here. So I just thought I'd throw that out about like ineligible projects and/or properties. Like just a small section on that, and obviously it's not going to be all inclusive, but it just to draw attention to things that we're absolutely not going to finance.
No, thank you for bringing that up. It's not something we had discussed prior. It should certainly be a portion of the program to have a section for ineligible expenses, and I would agree that refinancing should not be an eligible expense. It may be worthwhile including that at a future date, but not at this point.
Yep. Other question, Dave?
I have, well, this is a question on, we've got a 20-year maximum for real estate rehabilitation and development. I think that's maybe a little too long with such a small fund that we have, or are we thinking the fund will grow more later so that we could, otherwise we put 50%, like you mentioned, so it's $125,000, and that person is going to take 20 years to pay that off. It seems like a long time, and it may inhibit some other people that would be able to use the fund.
Good point. I will remind that this is the intent of this seed is to expand the funds for us to go and solicit for additional contribution from our local lenders. We hope to grow this fund beyond the $250,000 utilizing local support. That is a good point. 20 years is just our typical lending for a real estate development project. So that's pretty standard.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that point or expand on it. I know Chris and I have taken a very active approach in trying to find some support for this to see if we do come and ask you guys for seed funds, if there would be community partners that are interested. So we have had the opportunity to sit down, I believe, with Prevail, People State, Pineries. We have reached out to Simplicity, Nicolay. What's that? People's State Bank. So, we have a variety of individuals we've already reached out to, potential partners. They have expressed interest. They have just told us that we need to see something a little more concrete. We can't bring this to our leadership, our decision makers, and say, hey, this is a potential, because they're going to say, well, we have more important things to do. But a few of those that we have reached out to thus far have kind of non-committally said, hey, if you get this off the ground, come back to us. Let us help you.
And so how would that work with them? Would they contribute into the program and then expect that they would get the interest, or is it like a grant to us?
It depends on the lender. So some of the lenders have expressed that they would be willing to offer a grant for a community development program, and others are, I would say, more reserved and would expect to lend to us at 1%, for example, for us to relend. Similar to the intermediary lending program we've discussed, it'd be a low interest rate loan that we'd receive from our local lenders to relend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Relend it back out. Okay.
So it depends on the lender.
John?
I had the same comment about the real estate. I think the program, in my mind, is intended more for occupying buildings, expanding existing businesses, but not necessarily real estate. If it was a real estate project in front of us, I would think that would be something that would be TIF eligible. At least you would analyze it first as a TIF project versus this kind of program. I agree 20 years is a pretty long horizon for what this program I think was intended. So I agree with your comment. I was planning on striking out the real estate portion of it. So
I'll just return to a comment that I believe I made at our last meeting with regards to striking real estate redevelopment. I would agree that TIF assistance would be evaluated first. First and foremost, that would be the tool we would go to. We're seeing for market rate development to occur that TIF assistance still just may not be enough, especially in our current market, in order to support a project because of rising construction costs and where our rental rates currently are as a community, that if a new developer were to put up, say, a market rate unit that might be more high-end and attractive to folks with disposable income, those rental rates are going to be excessive beyond what they currently are. And I think there's been a lot of public sentiment about the rental rates at some of our new apartments being high right now. So just want to offer that it could still help out with local housing costs if we consider, real estate redevelopment as an eligible expense through the program. But at the end of the day, piloting this, so if that's stricken, hopefully we can return to that discussion at another point. But for now, a lot of the projects that we're looking to support aren't real estate redevelopment projects. They're trying to expand the use in an inactive portion of someone's building currently.
Any other questions, comments?
One of the other comments, along with the detail that Mr. Cooper was talking about, maybe in here it'd be appropriate to say that this information is not subject to open records, so that the applicants are aware that all this private information they're submitting is not going to be subject to open records, and that's the way it makes it clear to everybody. Because I believe legally you do shield this information from the public. So it's just another detail to provide some comfort and expectation up front.
A question, are our funds protected in any particular way? Do we get any security, first place position for the mortgage with our particular investment, or are we 100% at risk?
Well, in a project like this, depends on the applicant, but typically you've seen in economic development financing, you're not placing these funds in first position. Typically, you're placing these funds in second position to a lender. Now, if a project were to come forward, we are not necessarily putting a stipulation that they need to get funding from another financer, but we are requesting 50% of the funds matched. So if a business owner came forward with 50% of the project in their own cash, then yeah, we would be in first position. And we would require collateral for a loan that we're providing. So there is a possibility with the structure that we have in place that we could be in first position. For a strong business owner that has cash on hand, we could be in first position.
But you do say that you want to have adequate collateral to cover the city's loan, the RDA loan.
Yep.
So if we have adequate collateral, we've got some protection.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, collateral in either case, and then depending on if they have cash on hand or or need a loan from another institution, we may be in first or second position.
And if we're not talking real estate, we're talking UCC, and we're talking really purchase money lien anyway. You get a bill of sale, right? So you'd have a first purchase money lien on equipment and such, too. So.
As good as we.
Procedurally, do you expect that staff would be approving these? There'd be this loan review committee, and I assume Mr. Cooper might be on that. What do you see as the process for approval?
Yeah, good question. So the approval process would be an initial application review by city staff, be me, and then I would be taking that loan application to a loan review committee comprised of one member of this commission, which we would really appreciate having Mr. Cooper to support. Our Business Improvement District Director, Chloe Cruiser, we would request to be a part of that group, as she is the most intimately aware of our business mix in the downtown district. And then we have made a request to a few of the financing institutions that we have met with already. So Eric Kundinger from Prevail Bank, we would invite to be as a member of this review committee. And then in our first discussions with attorneys at Anderson O'Brien, we would request a review with them on board as well.
And then let's assume the committee approves it, whether it's unanimous or split. What happens next?
Excuse me?
What would happen, then is it approved, or do you bring it back to this board, or what happens after this committee review?
The committee review would officially approve the loan or deny the loan, or send it back for development.
I think if there's a question, if that committee, providing that committee the option to send it to RDA, if there's just they're really on the fence about something, we can certainly add a stipulation that it comes back to you guys. I think that's a fair tiebreaker in a case like that. And I think that's what you're maybe getting to.
No, that's fine,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was getting to.
As long as you guys were okay with you guys being the tiebreaker, of course. I don't want to push it on you.
Other questions? Mayor?
Just a comment. We've done a lot to keep our downtown vital, and I think this is a really important piece to continue to show a commitment to the city, to the residents, to the business owners downtown that, you know, we're with you. So I think this is really a good effort.
Other questions, comments? Well, what are your wishes? Jim?
I made the comment before, echoed what Mr. Laddick said about real estate and the 20-year time period. I would make a motion to strike out the real estate portion of it as an eligible project.
I'll second.
Alrighty, any questions, comments on that?
So we're striking, you're moving to strike real estate altogether?
Unless you have a better suggestion.
No, I'm just clarifying what you're
That was my intent.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, the 20-year term, the expense of it, taking up a good chunk of the program in one project. I think let's walk before we run.
So can I ask for a point of clarification then for us handling this program? The 20-year real estate development portion of this application was intended for taking, you know, vacant property and helping build on it. Now, there are other uses such as, you know, building rehabilitation that I think internally, or at least in my mind when drafting this, was also included in the real estate development portion. But the 3 projects that we have lined up right now are build-outs of spaces. So I just want to get clarification of whether or not those projects could be still eligible or not. Because without those projects, then I have no borrowers.
On page 1 of 9, I think it's your first page of the program, you've got 3 bullet points. You've got renovations of existing buildings, you've got working capital, and real estate development. It's the 3rd bullet point that I would be talking about striking. You've got hotels, conference and art centers, residential mixed-use properties, office development or redevelopment. I would strike those as examples. So the 3rd bullet point is what I was talking about.
Okay.
Certainly renovations of existing buildings, build-outs. You got an old building and the foundation's crumbling. Those, and you wouldn't have a 20-year payback on that. You have a shorter-term loan on those.
Okay.
Again, my vision of this is a shorter-term turnaround as opposed to a 20-year payback.
Okay. So shorter-term payback. Do you want to fall in line with our other loan terms, 10 years being the maximum?
Yeah, I'll defer to Mr. Cooper on that.
You know, and Chris and I had a discussion on this because I think it was 30 in there to begin with, and
Right, and 30
I was
yeah.
no on 30 because no one does commercial on 30, no one does junior liens on 30. It's a tough. It's like what are we trying to have this program do? And it's a tough dance between, you know, 20 to 25 is stretching it for anything that's, you know, non-owner occupied or commercial. Maybe 15. 10 might be. And again, it's going to be as a person coming in and asking for 20,000, or are they asking for 80,000? Because that's a huge payment difference.
Mm-hmm. And I would echo that sentiment. Y'all know finance. You have 2 ways of reducing the monthly costs: either reduce the rate or extend the terms. I think it would be much more supportive to have a 15-year term especially on a larger build-out cost. But then again, it's up to this body to direct.
Question again for Mr. Cooper. On these build-out costs, let's say for any real estate, retail on Main Street, office on Main Street, do they fund them that long? Is that the expectation, that those improvements last that long?
My guess is that people come in for that on a secondary Maybe they do the purchase and they have that on one and they come in for a rehab loan, which I would say 10 to 15 would be tops, but I would think it would go out at least 10, just because it's tied to real estate.
Yeah, okay.
Now, is the intent of the motion just to change the terms of the program, or are you including in that the approval of the project as presented with the change?
I was going to take it piece by piece. I have
Okay.
another change, too.
That
So
is
that was
just the change in the-
That's what we're
In
starting
the
with.
program presented. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
Sorry, that was on the change, right?
Correct.
Just a
Yes,
That was on the
right.
change.
Yes, I voted in the negative.
All righty. What's your next intent, John?
Mr. Chairman, I had one other comment. When you first started the program, I had the image of Main Street, second stories, first stories, kind of doing the facades, the inventory, those sorts of things. I was surprised when I saw North Yards, the old Lullaby site, in here. That's new construction. That's not what I had in mind. I wouldn't, in my imagination, I didn't have like Bank One in mind or North Yards in mind. I had more of the older buildings, smaller projects, more mom and pop approaches to things. So I just want some response or solicit response from the other committee members. How do you feel about those newer buildings that have already received substantial public monies when they first built? Do you have the same discomfort that I have about spending money again in some of those buildings? I'm looking for feedback. I'm comfortable, since I already been to the public incentives rather heftily, to come back again. I'm a little uncomfortable with that. I'm looking for response.
Comments, questions?
I guess I'll just, my opinion, I do agree with you, John. I didn't see this as someone coming in wanting to build out a brand-new space in the north side yard that's unoccupied. That wasn't, I guess, I had more of Main Street on my, I guess, in my opinion, I had more of Main Street, and some of those, the second floors, like we just talked about, and some of that. Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about north side yard like that. I don't want to pick on them, but that's what we're talking about. Because those are brand-new spaces, and they're there as white boxes, I think what they call them, and then they just come in and build them out.
Yeah, there's that one. There's the apartment buildings on Water Street that marginally occupied, I think. Another example might be the bank on the river. I just didn't have that in mind, and I'm uncomfortable. I'm not sure how the rest of you feel. And I'm looking for staff response, too, because apparently you've been talking, and now we got a letter from one of them, too.
Yeah, so if I could answer first. So the background on Northside Yard and on the Berkshire development on Water Street. Water Street is fully occupied. Their commercial space is occupied by ODC, and they occupy all of the space in that building. Regarding Northside Yard, they have given an earnest and hard effort in working with local business owners to move into their space, but because of the cost of build-out, they had a lot of local businesses. I think most recently, as far as a retailer or a restaurant goes, Bo Babes, the boba tea place on the corner of Division and 4th, they had gone so far as to get an architectural designs, but when they got to the cost estimate, they couldn't finance the project, and so they moved to their other location, which is still a good location for them. I think they found a good home. But they've had a lot of businesses walk away because they can't afford to build out.
And I think if I can add to that, so obviously I've been here for a short time, but I think similar to what Alderperson Kneebone has mentioned, the downtown being vibrant is important. The downtown being this lively place with, that is full and has people, I've heard it referred to as the heartbeat of the community. We hear time and time again in our office and just my short time here, of the cost it takes to build out a space north side yard. A space that it would, or what it would take to build out in a new, multifamily mixed-use space. And those are the things those are the projects that once they're full, they help catalyze further development and further development. So, I think focusing on Main Street is very important, but our downtown district is more than just Main Street. If you go to any thriving large city, their downtown is the main street, but it's also the side streets that you can go to and find those unique shops and ice cream parlors or whatever else it may be. So I just want to, make a comment that, I do agree it might be a little more uncomfortable, but as I see this Redevelopment Authority, kind of taking those a little bit more risks to further the vibrancy of our downtown and help these projects that otherwise wouldn't get off the ground, get off the ground. And so I don't want to lose sight of that. Again, I love this community. I see the potential, and we just continue to hear of everybody struggling. And we want to try to be far-reaching and not box ourselves into a corner. So totally fine whichever way you go. I just want you to keep in mind we're trying to add vibrancy to the entire downtown, not just Main Street.
And what you had in your minds originally about the program targeting specifically our more historic downtown, the two of three, I guess essentially three of the four projects that we've got lined up that are coming down the road are in the historic district. Majority of them are. So I can appreciate the concern, and
yeah, and I think it's a fair conversation. So I'll open it back to you guys. Sorry.
Yep.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Gardner, to go into the new buildings. Back in the old days, when you had put up a building, the landlord did the improvements, and he put it into the lease cost going forward. So the landlord also has some risk in the game. The way this thing is right now, the way it seems to me, is if we're going to give money for the build-out, the landlord doesn't have any risk in that money, and if something doesn't work, the landlord should be having a piece of the action, and that's, it's their responsibility. They put it up. I agree with John. There's been a whole bunch of public money that's been put in there to help them build that at a cost-effective way. We really should not be doing that. So I would be very comfortable excluding those couple areas that the commissioner mentioned, so that we can concentrate on the smaller businesses in the downtown area.
I don't disagree with you. I think there is a certain amount of support that we've already offered that project. That project is, I think, beyond the scope that the city has ever seen on a redevelopment project. There's over 200 housing units in a block, a lot of commercial space, and we're thankful that they have worked diligently to fill the residential space. We just got confirmation from the manager of the residential units that they are only vacant by 3 units starting next month. So they are doing the best they can in a very tough environment. So while I agree with you, we have given that project a lot of support. It is a difficult time to launch a business, and I've worked very diligently with Joy on the concept of a retail incubation program and project in that location, offering reduced rate rents for new retailers that get the adequate training, and hopefully will turn over new retail spaces in the city too. I'm really optimistic for that program, whether or not it receives assistance. So I just want to make sure that that's known, that that's the primary project that they're looking for support for.
I'm getting sick of seeing an empty space when I drive by.
Right, but is it our responsibility to make the landlord money when he doesn't have any extra skin in the game on that?
If you've got an independent business person that wants to be in there, we want to support the independent business person.
And if I may add to some of this too, I'm sorry to interject, Mary.
No, that's okay.
For every vacant building we have in our downtown district, we lose about $75,000 of net revenue every year. It's just per unit. So that's not just the landlord's rental income, but it's also money coming in for utilities to help offset the cost of our utilities infrastructure. So the longer that those spaces sit vacant and that infrastructure is not being used, we're not receiving any funds coming in to help maintain it. And so occupancy of those spaces is very important.
And it might serve as a catalyst, as I think what the director was saying. They've been empty for so long that I think it would feel like a big shot in the arm to get something in there.
You got quite a few commercial spaces. However, I heard that's about 100,000 build out. Guess what? That 250,000 is gone, and we still haven't filled many places in there. We could do more with that money on the smaller businesses that are struggling just as bad versus somebody that's got the financial backing to work on their projects and fund them, and more so than some of the smaller business people down there.
Well, they're included in the boundary of the Business Improvement District, so I think that they should have a fair shot.
Well, the Business Improvement District is not part of the RDA. That's something that the Common Council approved, so I would accept a motion to exclude those couple areas as part of the original startup on this program, because until we get going, I really would hate to see all that money disappear with just 2 projects or 3.
Can I make a comment before?
Sure, go ahead, Dave.
So we have the downtown business improvement boundaries, the district, or whatever you want to call it. But do all the loan applications come to this authority to get final approval? If they do, then we don't have to worry about excluding them, because we can exclude it on a case-by-case basis.
That's not what they proposed. What you would propose was the committee would approve it.
And if you guys would like to change that process, you guys could be the final say. The loan committee could make that recommendation to the RDA instead of you guys being the tiebreaker. I'll leave that up to you guys.
Just trying to think of what would the basis of approval or denial be if it were to come back here.
I think that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think that's a bad slope to go down. I really do. At the end of the day, I agree with you, John, and John. But I guess at the end of the day, if getting these funds out to a business in the downtown area that we've delineated accomplishes our goals, then that's what we should do. I don't like that as much, I agree, but it's helping accomplish our goal, the goal of this program.
And I guess I don't know, I'm speaking out of turn here, Chris, could there be something in these loan terms that we prioritize what you're saying above new builds first? In some way, I don't know what.
It's going to be first come, first served. That's the way it's going to work.
Sure.
So it won't necessarily, you wouldn't hold them back. What's the, maybe some of the discomfort too is the rents that are going to be commanded by the different properties. Are the rents that they're asking for on these newer projects considerably higher than the rents that are on Main Street? And if so, does that have some sort of sense that we're there supporting the ones that are struggling with the property owners that are struggling with lower rents versus the property owners that are commanding higher rents? Do you have a sense of what they're asking?
Their asking price right now in the North Side Yard units is $16 a square foot, and in most of the Main Street district and I guess I've seen anywhere between $8 and $12 a square foot is pretty standard, but I'm starting to see higher rates in the Main Street district too, edging up towards $14 a square foot. I was just toured several locations with a potential restaurant owner this morning, and looking in some other Division Street properties, they're looking at $24 a square foot in some of those properties, which is absurd. Right. Absurd. So now $16 a square foot, I'm not too surprised, and it's high, but it's also a new building. Moving into some of those properties on Division Street, they're ranging from $20 to $24 a square foot, not including the build-out costs. Now, I expect those to sit vacant for a very long time if they're going to continue to try to charge that. And they're going to get just some national chains at that rate. But we are trying to support local business ownership and growth, and at $16 a square foot, it's not outside the especially I guess seeing the $20 to $24 a square foot is not too absurd.
But the reason I ask was that that's an example of if the landlord were to modify their expectation for rents, they might be more successful in getting build-outs and occupants. And is it up to us to subsidize their expectations or higher rent expectations? That's, again, getting back to that, how much effort are they going to fill the space? And they've got parking issues too, but that's another story.
Yeah, and I mean, from what I've seen, Northside Yard is putting up a pretty significant amount of effort. I mean, they're trying to offer deals with the build-outs even, putting up more of their own money to get people in there. I think they did something special with Edward Jones just to get somebody in there. So I would say they are putting in a pretty significant amount of effort. They are doing a lot to ensure their apartments are filled. So I mean, from an outsider standpoint, just looking in, I would say they have done a lot. And
let me try this. From a loan review committee, you're going to be looking at loans, and you're going to be looking at the full A to Z, rent, cost of build-outs, that sort of thing. If you were given a project where they had an unusually high rental expectation, would you say, no, we want your participation a little bit more in this. We'll meet you halfway, but we want to see you modify your expectation? Would that be a committee response?
Well, but I think we're talking two different things now, because now are we talking about the building owner, or we're talking about a tenant? Right, because the building owner, our intent is to work with a tenant.
Correct.
To build out. So I don't know what expectations we can have of the building.
But what I'm saying is that obviously the building owner has the hope is that he or she is going to rent out the space.
Right.
So if they say we want, our expectation is way up here, and you kind of go, well, that's out of the norm. We're not going to participate because that part of the cost is too high. Would that be something the committee would deal with?
I think that's out of purview.
Out of your purview.
Out of our purview to say what the owner's charging for rent when we're working with the person who's going to lease it and build it out. I don't think that's within our.
Okay.
We can complain.
Well,
yeah.
So I do have.
See where I was trying to get at.
Absolutely.
I do have a point to make, though. So this program is designed to allow for the property owner to be an eligible borrower. So in that case, that could be within our purview, and we can negotiate on that. Right. Right. We're looking at a couple of property owners, not just Northside Yard, but two owners of properties on Main Street that they don't run the business out of.
Right,
But if they
completely
could be an
different
eligible
borrowers.
borrower.
The property
Right.
owner versus a lessee, completely different borrowers, absolutely.
So-
how you can approach them.
Sure.
Well, my concern is that if we use up all this money for the big places, and we've done that a few times in our history, Centerpoint Mall ate up a ton of capital, and we lost a lot of money on that TIF. And the problem is the Main Street people didn't get much of any support on that particular thing. We built Stage Department Store. That still didn't help the people on there. Let me throw it out. What if we would exclude the bigger development projects for 18 to 24 months to give the Main Street smaller businesses a chance to apply and use this money? And if there's no support or request for money on that, then we'd start moving the money to the bigger projects. I'm just thinking if we can help more people, it's a tough time right now.
would you like to do a full exclusion, or would you like us just to come back in 12 months and rehash the conversation?
That, I would say, would be pretty good. That way we can see what the support is for participating in our program, because the little guy, the guy that, $20,000 to the small guy is a heck of a lot more than $100,000 to the big guy.
Yeah, because I'd rather come back to you guys, let you guys know how it's going, maybe even if we have had interested parties that are outside the scope, they could even come talk. We can rehash that conversation. I just don't want an automatic change like in 18 months or something.
I would also be in support of that moratorium for a year. So Northside Yard is going to go and put their plans together for this retail incubation program, and they're expecting to build out next spring, right? So we can come back at that point in time too, and maybe evaluate that as a possibility after we've had some time to work with some of our downtown, or Main Street property owners.
Your thoughts?
Out of curiosity, how many business owners, how many people that operate businesses on Main Street actually own the buildings? Are most of them owned, or are they leased?
Most of them are leased.
Okay, so it's the same thing. We're improving property for a landlord, whether it's on Main Street or the North Side Yards or South Side or the East Side. If it's, just out of curiosity.
Yep.
It's been that way for years. Back when I was a youngster and working downtown, that most of the buildings are owned by about 3 or 4 families, so. And it hasn't changed, and they didn't put a nickel in buildings no matter what.
Mr. Chairman, I would try to paraphrase your motion, which
Okay.
was to make this program available to, not available to buildings that are less than 15 years old, and to come back in 12 months with a conversation as to whether we should expand or not to include those buildings. And in the meantime, if you have something that's really, really advantageous and really something you want to do, then bring that back to us on a case-by-case. So that's a motion to approve the entire program with that, well, no, I should do it individually, so you can vote for and against. I'll just make that motion for the 15-year moratorium, exclude buildings that are less than 15 years for 12 months.
Do we have a second?
I'll second
Mary
that.
seconds it.
It's fair.
Any discussion?
Just a clarifying question. I just want staff, is that an acceptable definition of exclusion? I just want to make sure that we're good with how we're going to define for the year or whatever we're going to do, make sure we have a good definition.
Yeah, I mean, for 15 years, there are very few buildings that are newer than 15 years old, and so we're not excluding many properties at that rate. And, you know, at a 12-month delay, and for, you know, a special case, if we have an exceptional program to bring forward, which I do think we do have, I'm really excited for Northside Yard to be rolling that program out with the Small Business Development Center. I'm more than happy to bring that back for you all for review at that point, but it seems reasonable to me. There are so few buildings newer than 15 years old, so.
And I think that helps too, if this can get off the ground, kind of start this process, and we can get more partners in to have more money in the fund, maybe then the comfort level changes too.
Right, a year from now, there might be way more money in that, and then then we just roll. So that would be great. I'd love to see that.
All right.
Is there a second? Oh, Mary seconded it. I'm sorry. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the downtown business improvement, the downtown business improvement loan program as amended.
Is there a second? You can't second it.
I'll second it.
I'll think Dave seconds it. Discussion? Director?
There was mention about the ineligible projects properties. Do we need any more expansion on that? Did you want that added as well? And then also about the statement about it's not open records request eligible?
Yes.
Those two as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think that was ineligible. That was good suggestions.
I'm not concerned about the exact wording. Staff can
I'm
word
not.
that however they want. I'm not concerned about that at all.
Those
But
are
I think
good.
it's important to at least draw attention to that. This is not just a wide open for whatever you
It's
want.
not, especially refinancing. That's an
Especially
excellent example.
refinancing.
Especially,
Yeah.
especially.
I appreciate the comment that it'll reduce staff time, too.
Well, I mean-
with people calling, oh, free money
If someone
over
actually
here.
reads it, they're not going to call about a refinance. Now, you're still going to get calls about refinancing, I'm sure, but maybe it'll be,
at
maybe
least
you'll get
just
2 or
say
3
no.
less calls or emails.
Well, and you can reasonably deny them that, because it says right here in black and white, it's not eligible, as opposed to, well, that's just your opinion.
Right.
Yeah, you don't do that.
And point of clarification on process for approval, city staff app review, loan committee, RDA final vote, or was that a?
No, I guess.
I did not include that in my motion.
That is not, okay.
If you want to do it as an editorial, to do a tiebreaker, that's fine, but other than that, I have a,
I like how how you explained it, the setup of the approval process.
Beautiful, thank you.
Other
Comments? Director will take the roll.
Schleiss.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Kemeter.
Aye.
Laddick.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 3, approval to sell 217 Second Street. Director.
Yeah, so 217 Second Street has been on the market for quite some time. Chris has fielded a number of phone calls. I think the primary concern being the size, why people have kind of shied away from it, along with other reasons. But Chris was in contact with a potential buyer, and so we wanted to bring this forward. Chris?
Yeah, we're just seeking a pre-approval to sell the lot at the listed price. We don't have the official offer in hand, but the owner of New Leaf Building and Remodeling has expressed interest in the parcel and expects to submit an offer soon for 217 Second Street, which is an 8,000 square foot lot zoned R3, so it could be a single family or two family. Their intention would be to build a single family home on the parcel.
I'll make a motion to approve, pre-approval for 217 Second Street.
Dave?
I'll second
Gene,
it.
second. Discussion? Director will take the roll.
Schleiss.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Kemeter.
Aye.
Laddick.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 4, discussion on regional commercial loan buy-down program. Director.
Yeah, so this is one that kind of spurred out of our initial conversation with the commercial, downtown commercial redevelopment loan that was just approved previous. So staff wanted to continue down this route, explore the possibilities, see what would be possible. And Chris was able to work with our Central Wisconsin Economic Development Fund, Kristen Fish and Thomas Fish, to kind of see where this could go. So Chris, I'll pass it to you. I know you put a memo together for this.
If you want to advance the slides for it, it's pretty quick and easy. We had been in contact with Kristen Fish Peterson and Thomas Fish, who are administrators of the revolving loan fund for the region. And they asked some clarifying questions. So we've landed on a request that we're making to the Central Wisconsin Economic Development Fund board next week on an official buy-down program that we could start here with the Redevelopment Authority in the city of Stevens Point, and that other communities could also tap into if they have an interest. The clarifying questions that they had asked is essentially what is the maximum dollar amount that the Redevelopment Authority would like to purchase per year per loan? What sort of interest rate are you hoping to buy down to? And so in discussion with the administrators, we're seeking to purchase down a maximum of 2%, so we could reduce loans to 2 to 3%. Currently, the gap financing loans and microloans are available at a 3 to 5% rate. This will allow us to just bring that down a little bit further for local borrowers. And the third financing program that the Central Wisconsin Economic Development Fund has is a startup loan fund, and those loans are already forgivable, so we would not want to extend this buy-down program to that program. Those rates they have set at 0 to 3%, so they're already beneficial enough for a startup fund, and they've seen a lot of activity in that fund, so we don't need to see any advancement of that program. They also had some questions about whether or not the buy-down program, if the funds would be paid directly to CWED or if they'd be paid to the borrower through a reimbursement. There comes some tax advantages for the businesses if they are paying the loan in full and then reimbursed through the program. So we left it open to discussion, and so that would be open to either, and open discussion for the full board next week.
Commissioners, your thoughts?
Are there programs based on need? So if somebody has adequate cash flow, they really don't see much of a subsidy or discount?
Right, so the gap financing program is based on need. The borrower needs to be working with a lender in first position, and that lender needs to determine that they will not float their loan by themselves, that they think it's too risky of a loan to make work. So gap financing comes in through CWED to help make that project cash flow, and then becomes more of a resource for the community. Microloans, they don't need to have a borrower in first position. That one can be made directly from CWED to the borrower. And the maximum loan amount on that is only $75,000. So you're not seeing as much of an interest rate on those microloans, but those are the loans that our local retailers, restaurants, entertainment businesses are more likely to take up, and the gap financing programs are more likely, Great Northern Distilling is an example. Some of those larger venues are purchasing real estate or building real estate. They are seeking out those gap financing funds. So those are the types of programs or projects you'd be supporting through a buy-down.
So do you see this buy-down that RDA would do of a CWED loan as based on need, or would it be an automatic buy-down?
Well, open to discussion. I would actually look to you all for direction on that. We would like to see it be needed or necessary for the project to move forward, which is where I think in the gap financing is where we really find a niche for a buy-down.
I would agree. I'd like to see it based on cash flows, justifications. Sometimes you'd see projects come through and they'd have great profit margins, except that the product couldn't be, they couldn't get a loan because of the equity or something.
There are certain programs or projects. One that was recently reviewed, I can use as an example. There was a new facility, a new type of entertainment facility that's being constructed or hoped to be constructed up in Rothschild, and their loan request came through, and the profit margin was adequate, but it was such a niche facility that there was lending concerns about what the resale value on that type of facility would be, and so it wasn't necessarily, I guess the loan review wasn't based on need, but was more concerned about, this is a facility that has a lot of potential benefit. It's maybe a riskier investment, that it might not need the lending based on the books, but based on the value of the property, it might be necessary.
And may I again, how would you see the review of this program being done locally?
That would be, so correct me if I'm wrong, Director, but the way we see this being evaluated is that any lender who is seeking financing through Central Wisconsin Economic Development Fund, we would be contacted by the administrators, Kristen Fish or Tom Fish, and then we brought into the loan review process then at that point to see the cash flow statements for the project and say whether or not we'd support it with the buy-down.
So you wouldn't take that to this loan review committee? You have that for the previous program, you just do it in-house. Is that what you're suggesting?
And they have a loan review committee too for CWED, so that those approvals go to that loan committee. If they need to be reviewed beyond the review committee, then it goes to the full board for review. Typically, most of the smaller loans, they don't end up coming to the full board for discussion. It's usually a quick stamp of approval, but all of them do come forward to the board to be seen and officially approved. It's more of those larger gap financing loans that come with a longer discussion.
I'd like to see that be in a reimbursement basis on the interest. So if something something happened that nobody was planning, they couldn't make the payments, I don't want to see us still paying 2% of the interest that's occurring and that's going down the rabbit hole. Instead, we would pay as they pay, so, because we're not going to be in any position to collect any of that back, so I think it should be on a reimbursement.
Okay.
John, you're going to say something?
How much money are we talking about for establishing this program?
I think we'd leave that up for discussion for this committee, how much you'd be comfortable with starting with. Obviously, if we were to burn through that, we would come back and see if you guys would like to do more. We can give you an update on what it went towards. And Chris, unless you have any other thoughts or anything to add?
Well, just to add to that, so we're recommending a maximum of $20,000 per year. That most of the time you're not going to have a loan where you're going to be buying down $20,000 a year of interest. There are very few loans that reach that level. Most loans through CWED are amortized over, I guess the loan terms are for usually a maximum of 10 years, but amortized over 20. And so the original loan terms, as we discussed in this request, we would only agree for the loan buy down for the initial term, and then anything beyond that would be a renegotiation. So I guess a maximum of 200,000 would be adequate for some of our larger loan funds.
Questions, comments?
So, Chris, in here you have up to $20,000 per year. I assume that's per, it sounds like that's per applicant, per deal per year, not $20,000. And if 5 deals come in, we have to pull out of that pot. That's not what you're saying.
Right. We don't get a gap financing loan request often.
Right, I'm sure.
You have a really big project for,
Yeah.
say, like
Okay.
a business like Steel King, which they just started a new facility, right?
Right.
So they're not going to come back anytime soon. But it's, I think to pilot, I think that's an adequate dollar amount, and that would give us at least some negotiating power over a number of loans. I think we'd probably be seeing more loans of about $5,000 a year of interest that would be lying down.
That's what I
not
was,
20,000. So we'd be looking at more like 3 or 4 loans that would be supporting.
Yep. And I like it based on need, like Commissioner Gardner said. I think that's our goal too, is the need has to be there.
Other questions, comments, motions?
The item says discussion. Were you looking for action today? Or were you
I'm sorry?
You were not. Okay.
We weren't, but if the committee is hot to trot and really wants to go for it, yeah.
I don't want to come back again.
I think I would wait on a motion just so we can have a full discussion with CWED. I think knowing what exactly you guys are looking for this helps us bring that to them. There's a meeting upcoming, I forget when.
It's next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah.
So we can bring this fully to them, explain, but I don't think it's necessary for a motion for you guys. We'd like to come back and actually talk about what they said and what their discussion was before anything's made, in case there's changes, things like that.
It was the chairman's idea, so I'm in support of it.
Coming back. It says we could take possible action according to the agenda, but we'll hold it off. Not a problem. Thank you. Number 5, discussion on transfer center location and parking for redeveloped parcels.
Yeah, so this was something that was brought up at our last meeting when we were discussing the updates to the target area master plan. One of the comments or ideas that was brought up is, could you evaluate the feasibility of moving that transit center from that northwest corner of the Shopko site to the southwest corner, kind of where the buses currently park. So we took that back. We wanted to make sure we talked with Transit, who's kind of leading this effort with the transfer station. Want to talk with them specifically what their thoughts are about doing so. Put kind of bullet points of just different things that came up during those discussions, just the safety of adding it closer to Main Street, the current route connectivity that the current location offers, ensuring we maintain the character and green space close to Main Street, where it really matters, developable land. One of the comments or primary factors that was brought up for this idea was maintaining that northwest corner as developable, possibly, taxable land, something that could be put on it. I guess one of the big things that came up in our conversations was, well, to get the transfer center to even remotely work, we'd have to demo 1, if not 2, maybe even look at that 3rd building to really make that work. And the ROI on, demoing, I'll just even stick with 2 buildings to place that transit center really didn't calculate out. So there's kind of that discrepancy there, along with a variety of other factors in which really didn't make that site feasible. Recommendation is not to move it to, if you look on page 21, not to move it to that second empty circle closer to Main Street, as it was less than ideal location. However, what came from this conversation was kind of the long-term planning efforts that would come from this. So I'm going to use WASA as an example. I don't know their for sure plans, so don't quote me specifically on this, but they have a transfer center in their downtown. It's just to the east of the Grand Theater, I believe block or so away, and a little bit to the south. But they have, similar to what we're proposing, except instead of one building, I believe they have two, and they're a little more built out. They have some enclosed spaces, things like that. But, you know, how I see this playing out is, right now, we're moving from street to a building of minor proportion, in which, as we continue to grow as a community, we're eventually going to hit the point of maybe something is needed that's even a little more grand than what we're currently proposing. So, you know, we're growing in increments. You know, so how we see this playing out is we're moving to our next step for the next 15 to 25, maybe 30 years. When that time hits, we feel that we're going to be built out in the surrounding downtown enough that that piece of land is going to be that much more valuable, and there are going to be that many more interested parties for it. So at that time, we would take a look at our transit center, or our transit system, evaluate its needs, and see what else we can do to move that transfer center. Again, what we're building here is not going to be anything special, grand. It's not going to have shops in the bottom. You know, I guess the most grand part about it is it might have bathrooms.
That'd be good.
In which plumbing can be reused for whatever else goes there. But, you know, kind of taking step two, not jumping to step three by any means, but taking step two, building out this, you know, again, transit center that's fairly simplistic, letting it live out its useful life, and then reevaluating it for development in the future. So I think, to your guys' point, you bring up something that really needs to be thought about, that it's a prime piece of land, and, you know, we can look at it for development, but at this time, staff feels that that is the best use for it for at least the next 15 to 30 years. So but I just want to bring that to you. Additional discussion if you guys would like to have. We're happy to clarify or do additional research if you guys have anything.
Questions, comments on that part, Dave?
I'm fine with it, but I do have one suggestion.
Yeah, what you got?
So we have the park here. We don't need a park across the street. Can we just make this parking? We can run the parking lot right up to that building.
Yeah, and I think I attempted to put,
It looks like that was going to be a one-way street.
I think I attempted to put something in the packet that
Yeah.
should have been for parking.
If you go to
unless
the
I
next slide,
There's a memo in the packet that we can
Right,
discuss.
but it looked like you were
Oh.
nearing the street.
Look at that. All right. Thank you, Chris.
yeah.
It's like you put this together.
So the other memo for this agenda item is regarding downtown parking around the Shopco lot. So this body had requested that staff are very intentional about parking around the surrounding developments. We've been working with the folks in engineering to prepare some mock-ups and parking counts in the area, and we'll actually be hosting a public information meeting and planning session. Oh no, it's gone. Magic.
Did it go away?
Yeah.
Should it come back?
Anyway, we'll be hosting a public information meeting and planning session on Wednesday, May 28th, from 6 to 7:30 to discuss this publicly. And this isn't actually the most up-to-date version that we'll have at that meeting. This is just the preliminary version we've been using for discussion internally regarding the amount of parking around the development parcels, as well as the parking that'll be on site for the developments. So I included some of the counts in the memo that's in your packets, but right now, in the entire Shopco lot, there's about 442 stalls, but for more of a direct comparison, I like to focus on just the south parking lot. It's oftentimes forget about the parking on the east and the north portion of that lot, but in total, there's 442 or 447, depending on which parking study you read. And 306 of that is in the parking lot south of the old Shopco building. The draft designs that we have with Public Works folks on staff, we think we can fit anywhere between 104 and 137 parking stalls within the right-of-way. And that would actually include an expansion of angled parking on the east side of the Strong's Union connection by the Shopco parking lot, and also angled parking on that north half by the transit center. There would also be discussion on removing a few parking stalls on the Main Street portion of this map for tree planting areas that are large enough to support some mature growth trees, so that we have ample shade coverage for pedestrians in summer months. We expect in the development proposal for the north half of the site about 85 surface parking stalls, and if we're able to add in underground parking or expand by another 52 stalls, so we're looking near 140 stalls at that development pad. And then as planned, I believe it was 52 stalls on the south half of the lot as planned, and that could be expanded for additional underground parking if we find the right project. All in all, we're looking at a loss of about 150 parking stalls. Internally, city administration has felt that that's a reasonable amount of parking to lose on the site, given the current vacancy of parking on the lot. We have a lot of business owners who are concerned about that amount of loss, but we're discussing that with them and ensuring that if the 85 stalls of parking for the north development is all that we're able to secure, what our alternatives are. So I mentioned briefly in the memo about lot 11. It's the public parking lot in front of the high-rise manor. That parking lot is heavily underutilized right now. We get about 30, maximum about 30 stalls used out of 76 at that lot, so there's some ability to absorb residential parking at that lot as well. So that is up for discussion and would need to be planned out with the developer, but that's a current update on parking counts for the Shopko site.
And Dave, to your comment, how parking is going to eat up a little bit of that, but we can also keep that in mind as we're designing that space.
Yeah, just so the road, is 2 lanes, double, and then you can run that, it's all city property, you can run it right up to that building with a curb stop. Everybody wants to park in front of their building. They don't want to walk. Park in front of the front door.
Do you want to park or do you want to park? Which park?
Yeah. I would like to park my car, or even better, my pickup truck. It's hard to get in.
Gene? John, I just want to, I agree with staff to leave that transit back in there where it is. I think on the corner, you've got, by the size of the, lot, you would have you'd almost have to force all your traffic, your buses, like they are now. They got to go down Main Street to get out to go to the north side or the west side. And I think, you're just blocking up the flow of traffic through that downtown area with them going that way, so.
Other questions, comments? Question on that meeting on the May 28th. Is that going to be similar to the prior meetings we've had before on the downtown area, or is this, which included commissions, committees, and all this, or is it pretty much interested parties is your intent?
Just interested parties, not like the former meeting. So this is also more intended for, members of this body, but then also members of the community mostly to come in and provide input. We've had a lot of requests from downtown residents, business owners, and property owners regarding the competing interests, right? Integration of green space, input on what amenities the public wants at that bus transfer center, and then inclusion of amenities in the park space is another piece to discuss. So there'll be a discussion about right-of-way, parking and design, how we integrate green space within that design, amenities within park space, and then amenities at the transfer center.
Is staff envisioning, could you go to the slide that, if the block that's Shopko parking lot, you're going to put development in there. Are you envisioning that the parking provided there would be public parking? Or is there going to be parking associated, say if there's residential above, it's going to be parking for the residents?
It'd be first and foremost related to the development. However, what's going to be developed on this strip, we would like to match the rest of the downtown, so it'd be 2, maybe 3 stories, but more like 2. So the amount of density that's going to be within that block is going to be significantly less than a just full apartment complex. So a lot of the parking that we'd anticipate on that site would be related to the development. However, we do anticipate getting the EPA grant in which we can evaluate underground parking on that site, which would be more feasible when comparing to the north, as, get this right, there is lower groundwater, so you have more room between ground and the ground and the groundwater to put a underground parking. Also, contamination kind of starts to become less. It's still there, but the impacts of it are less, and hopefully it'll be less expensive to manage. So we would hope that really the underground parking that could go on that south side would be everything that the development needs, and the rest could be public.
I would just, again, I caution about double counting some of those spaces. Clearly, the stuff in the right-of-way is going to be public.
Yep.
The stuff within the block, probably not.
Yeah.
So,
It would depend on how it develops out, but yeah, if there is extra space that we could have
Right.
public parking, we could do that, or formulate an agreement if that's part of the deal.
Yeah, I know it's a conceptual image, but I do think the original concept included parking on the first floor of that residential building that's labeled a C. In your packets.
On page 21.
Yeah, now the Vanderwall, when they put this image together, I don't think they consulted with their public works staff about putting an entryway into parking that close to an intersection. So they might need a different entry point, but there might be first floor parking on that yellow building C as well for the residents who are living there.
so remains to be seen. Work in progress.
Yeah. Unless you're looking to develop. No?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
Other questions, comments? All righty, this is just on here for discussion. Moving right along, number 6, discussion on 1101 Centerpoint Drive, the former Great Lakes Education Loan Services Director.
Yeah, so this was an education piece for me, so I thought I'd share with you guys. John Schleitz and I here were talking about 1101 Centerpoint Drive. It came about, it came into question who's the owner of that building. And that question came to be as we were talking about what's potentially going to happen with it, as well as, who's going to make that decision. And it came into question of, well, the RDA previously approved some work on that building, so it was felt that the RDA was the owners, or were the owners. And then there were some city staff that thought, oh, we were paying for the current stuff, so I thought we were the owners, and who knew? So looking into it further, it did show in the current lease-to-own agreement that we are currently not the owner. Nobody is yet. The Centerpoint Mall Corporation is a corporation out of Oklahoma City that currently manages or owns the building. We are in a lease-to-own agreement with them, which would come to fruition in 2026. As a result of that eventual divorce from that agreement, the RDA would become the party that owns and controls that building under that lease-to-own agreement. So once the lease payments are complete, the property title would transfer to the city's Redevelopment Authority. At that time, you guys would serve as the deciding entity on what happens to that building going into the future, sell, lease, on what terms, et cetera. Eventually, when we answer a few more questions, we're reaching out to the Centerpoint Mall Corporation to see if that lease-to-own situation can be ended early, what that would cost. The city does have some investment into the building, so would like to involve them in the conversation of, well, if the property were to lease or sell, would there be any revenue that would be split between RDA? Would it all go to RDA? I'm sure if you asked the city, they would love if it all just went to them. So I'd love if it all just went to me, but we'll see what happens. But the city has been making financial contributions. They have some stake in it, so that discussion will need to be had. But I really wanted to bring this to you as we have had some interest in the building. There was one entity that would like to lease the building, and there's another entity that would like to just all out buy the property, and they have intended that they would do a pretty significant renovation of the property, which could do that building some good. So I just wanted to bring this to you guys as a initial conversation, kind of outline everything in a memo. That way you guys can look at it, read it over. Let us know as staff if you have any questions or if there's anything we can clarify, or that 3 a.m. thought that pops into your head of, we think about this, you can let us know. We do plan to bring back this item at additional meetings, as well as a closed session item when it's warranted to talk about, what the potential lease or sale of that building would look like. So this is just a starting point. More updates to come. Unless you guys have any questions now, we're happy to answer or get you answers.
Just a comment, I'd be totally for terminating that lease early, paying it off, and getting it sold, and get it back on tax rolls, especially if they're doing improvements. It's a win-win.
The way we wound up with this is they agreed to sell it to the city, but they didn't want the money right away.
Oh.
So they want to go on this structure, which they probably make a heck of a lot more interest on this lease than they would on their money. So
Yeah.
at least we're getting to the end of it now. But yeah, I agree, pay it off early.
So Director, are you envisioning a closed session item coming forward in the very near term, future, none?
Next week? No, just kidding.
All right, let's go.
Tomorrow.
Would anticipate that coming forward. Would like to get answers about terminating the lease early, still waiting on them. Their initial comment was, well, as long as you pay off the rest of what you owe, as well as the legal fees of what it would cost, take to do that, seems like a pretty fair trade. So waiting to hear back from them on an official decision, as well as what that would be. Would also kind of like to start to have conversations with our Treasury Department and leadership at the city to see if, what their thoughts are on what the ask would be. Bring that all forward at one time so it can be a complete and full discussion. So I don't think, I would say 2 months from now, we would be having that discussion, if I'm going to be a conservative answer.
Other questions, comments?
I would just echo what Dave Laddick said. If we can get control of that and get it back on the tax rolls to someone who's going to do something with it that fits in with our downtown area, we got to get out of the real estate ownership business as fast as we can. So that would be good.
All righty. With that, we are adjourned, and you can get home before the storm.
Yeah.
This meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.